Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be looking at The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan, the fourth book in the Wheel of Time. Apologies in advance for how long this video is going to be. I just simply refuse to condense my thoughts down to a shorter video that would adhere more to the algorithm. I refuse to do it. There's so much I want to talk about in this and I refuse to leave any of it out. My videos are also longer in general because I spend so long theorizing different things, and I'm not going to stop with this, especially this book, because the scope of the world has just gone to a massive degree. I'll probably split this up into two separate videos. Maybe one will be focused mainly on Rand and the other will mainly be on Perrin. So yeah, this was a spectacular book. It's my favorite book in the series so far. And as I mentioned in my Grey Hunt review, I'm working on a rating system for books, and currently in the rough draft, this is right at the top of my rankings. And it's strange because this is my favorite book in the series, my favorite book to date overall as well, but it's also the book I have the most complaints for in the series so far, which I'll get to later on. I even love this book so much, I'm wearing black for the occasion. I even have the black do-rag on because my braids are in an absolute shambles. There won't be a spoiler-free section for the video because it's the fourth book in the series. If you've made it this far, you don't really need spoiler-free videos anymore, I feel like, before continuing on. And also, there's so much to cover in this that I just don't have any time to waste on that. Normally I do a spoiler-free section where I give my general thoughts on the book before going into the spoiler-filled section where I go into specifics. So I'm going to do the reverse of that for this video. I'm going to talk about each character in turn, and then at the very end when I'm finished with all of them, I'm going to talk about the general thoughts of the world and the point that I feel the Shadow Rising has brought it to. So we start off this book with Min, or I guess I should say Elmendreda. She has finally returned to the White Tower, but when she gets there, she starts to see all these different signs of danger in the tower. All the Aes Sedai are showing signs of death or being wounded, and when she meets up with Swan again, they decide to team up, and Min stays in the tower to observe any auras she might see. And she meets up with Gawain again, which was nice. She sees in his aura that he has the Blade Master's sword, so I guess he gets pretty proficient with the blade. And he also has his crest, the charging boar, over a green banner instead of red, which surprised me because I thought Gawain would always stay loyal to Andor, but I guess that's not the case. She also sees over Loghain's head the halo of blue and gold, signifying power and glory. I knew it. I called it in the review on The Great Hunt. I knew Loghain was not done with the one power. There's big things in store for him. Can't wait to see that. And fast forward a bit, and we see the signs of danger start to come to fruition. Elaida has led a group to overtake Swan in a coup, and all the Aes Sedai who opposed Elaida have been killed or have left the tower. So Swan and Lyanna are now still. That was a pretty big shock. This was actually foreshadowed by Min at the start when she saw Swan on the ground naked, and Swan severely misunderstood that foretelling. She thought it meant she got a lover. How wrong was she? And it was a shock that she got stilled, her and Leanne, but honestly didn't care too much. This is an anti-Aes Sedai channel. I'm just really looking forward to Loghain. I'm really looking forward to seeing his POVs, learning more about him as a character. I really hope he doesn't just stay as Swan's dog. I know he swore himself to her at the end of the book, but I hope he does do his own thing eventually down the line. And also shout out to Laras. She is awesome. I really liked what she done for Min at the end of the book. All the companions in this series are gems. I've said it numerous times throughout my videos, but they really are. I'm not buying the shift on Elaida, guys. I just got done gushing over her in the Dragon Reborn review, and now she got me looking like an actual goofball. She was always mean, yes, but I never got the impression from her that she would be able to do the things that she done to people during the coup, like killing all the Aes Sedai, severely beating Swan and Lyanne before parading them around Tar Valon. And there was two things introduced in this book that I feel like were instrumental in what happened in the White Tower, and they were both introduced by Moghedien, and these two things are memory altercation and compulsion. Because not only did Moghedien compel Nynaeve and Elaine to tell her everything that they knew, she also completely removed it from their memories. So I feel like if these kinds of abilities are at play in the world, then the implications are immense, and it makes me think I need to kind of look at what's happened in the series so far through a new lens. I feel like there's definitely somebody pulling the strings from behind the scenes here, guys, because during the Dragon Reborn, one of Egwene's dream visions that she had was of puppets being controlled by puppets, being controlled by puppets, and so on. So I feel like that's what happened at the White Tower here, because from the reader's perspective, this was all pretty abrupt. We got the visions of the coup coming, and then at the end of the book, we got the coup happening. We got none of the in-between. The only real in-between we got was of the novice that Min talked to at the start of the book. I think her name was Sarah. I think her name was Sarah. She was tortured by an Aes Sedai who was clearly on the side of Shadow, but that Aes Sedai's face, their face was covered by the shadow from their cloak. So if that was Elaida, why was that even done? Because we already knew Elida wanted that kind of information, so I don't think that was Elida. I think that was actually either Varen or Alana on their way to Emond's Field. After finishing this book, I think Varen is definitely Black Aja. I'll talk a bit more about that when I talk about Perrin. Gawain was pretty badass at the end of this book. He sided with Elida, which was a surprise, but I think that's honestly just Swan's own fault. Why on earth would Gawain side with Swan after how she treated him at the start of the book? And he has his own group of younglings now, which is pretty cool, and he killed the top 2 warder instructors. That was pretty impressive. Galad was missing for the coup. I'm not sure where he went, but Egwene had a vision of Galad wrapping himself in white at some point, and so I think he left to join the White Cloaks because it was implied in this that he was getting friendly with them. Some other plotlines I'm really looking forward to from the start of the book is the High Lady Suroth and Mazrim Taim. I'm really looking forward to how things progress with them moving forward, because we have the High Lady Suroth who wants to capture and control Rand. I think she might end up with the bracelets and collar that Nynaeve got them on to dispose of at the end of the book. And then we have Mazrim Taim, who Liandrin wants to set up to frame Rand. So yes, I'm very excited to see what happens with these guys. So Rand in this is like a new man after the Dragon Reborn. He's aware of the fact that the Forsaken are out there, and after the Trollocs raid the stone, he's conscious of the fact that there are all these eyes watching his next step, and he needs to contemplate how he's going to pull something off that nobody can expect, friend or foe alike, without stepping into any traps. He's fully resigned himself to his duty as the Dragon Reborn, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what Jordan does with Rand in that mindset of basically doing anything that needs to be done, no matter the cost, because we saw him leave the 2 rivers to Perrin pretty much, and he was pretty accepting of the fact that all his friends and all the Aiel were in danger during his journey to Al-Khair Dal, so he seems to be going down the Eren and Fos route, 2 other characters I love. I really enjoyed seeing this development in Rand in this book, because I was waiting since book 1 for Rand to say screw you to Moiraine, and he finally does in this, and he essentially does it to Egwene as well. And I saw some reviews where people were just unhappy with how Rand treated Moiraine in this book, and I have to say I think that is flat out unreasonable. Rand is essentially cornered and his only way is forward. He simply can't afford to confide in somebody that he can't trust fully. And he knows this fact himself. He's aware of this himself. He said so that he wants to confide in Moiraine. He wants to trust her and ask her for advice, but she can't be trusted. He's aware of the fact that Moiraine doesn't care about him. She needs the dragon, and one that she can manipulate. Rand's development as a king was fantastic. I really loved seeing that. Like how he dealt with the Teiran lords at the start of the book. That was really impressive, considering all he had to go off there was some advice from Elaine and then some books. And that's what made me really enjoy his State of Solitude even more, was the fact that he didn't confide in anybody, which just led to him being continuously underestimated. Like when Moiraine thought that he was not up to being as hard as he was on the lords, and then the wise ones, they thought Avienda was a good enough distraction with just a pretty face. And I really appreciated how we see that Rand has accepted that he needs to make these tough decisions and do what needs to be done, but we still get to see the toll that his duty as a Dragon Reborn is taking on him. And we see this continuously throughout his journey in this book, like when he tries to revive the dead kid in the stone. That was just gut-wrenching, and we see him show regret towards how he dealt with Althema when dealing with the rest of the lords. And we see him now and again, he's reminiscing about the times back in Emond's Field, longing for those again. And then towards the end of the book, we see that he doesn't really want to harm the Aiel at all, but he is the Dragon Reborn, and what needs to be done needs to be done. And I just really love seeing that resolve in Rand. It's what made me fall in love with those characters I mentioned earlier, like Fos and Eren. So Rand decides to go to Rhuidean in the Aiel Waste, and what Jordan did with the Aiel in this book was just brilliant. Seriously, the Aiel are not just this set of characters with this set of quirks because they're from this part of the world. They're their own fleshed out nation with their own set of unique customs, culture, tradition, heritage, and all of this adds up to make them feel like a real people. And they're fascinating people too, because they have all these customs like the roof mistress system, the sister wife system, the septs and clans and their chiefs, the Gaishane system with the G-A-To, I think that's what it's called, the honor and obligation principles. All these things just added together to make me feel really intrigued in what I was learning about throughout the journey. And we have Avienda, she's Rand's new love interest, and I think she's my favourite of all the pairings so far between Rand and the 3 girls. So I guess Avienda was the 4th person that Min saw at the end of the Great Hunt. My favourite pairing for Rand is actually Lanfear, because that's the only pairing to me that doesn't feel forced, but Rand's relationships feeling forced is kind of the point, because he is so strongly to Viren, pulling all the girls towards their fates. What the Wise Ones done with Avienda, that was really, really clever. I was really impressed by that, because once they noticed Avienda didn't work as a pretty face, they used her as a decoy, and Rand never suspected them hiding in his dreams, watching him in those. And I just thought that was brilliant from them. Rand literally has the basic harem anime setup going for him right now, because he has the childhood friend in Egwene, the pretty new girl in Elaine, the tomboy in Min, and then finally he has, somehow Jordan managed to give him a tsundere in Avienda. And if you don't know what a tsundere is, good for you, you're not a weeb, that's too far gone yet. But a tsundere is somebody that acts towards somebody as if they hate them, but deep down they actually really like them, or as Elaine would put it, are really fond of them. I suppose you could even add Lanfear to the mix and say that he has a yandere. But moving on, I think the wildest takeaway from this whole book is that Rand is going to marry his brother's sister. What the fuck? So, for those of you who are new to the series like myself, but you have no idea what I'm talking about right now, this is something that extends all the way back to the Eye of the World, when Rand and Mat are on their way to Camelin. Rand is talking to the farmer that's bringing him there. I think his name was Bunt. I'm pretty sure his name was Bunt. Bunt is explaining to Rand that there's this missing daughter of Andorra, whose name is Tigraine rather. And after Tigraine went missing, her brother Luke also went missing up in the Blight. And before going missing, Tigraine had a kid with Tarangale. Fast forward to the Shadow Rising, Lord Luke has returned and he is in the Two Rivers. Perrin recognizes him, but he can't place the resemblance. Then during Rand's arc, we learn about his mother, who was called Shail, and Shail came over the Dragon Wall to become a Maiden of the Spear after being told to by this Aes Sedai called Gatara Moroso, who, if you can't remember that name, is the Keeper of Chronicles who had the foretelling before dying that Moiraine and Swan noticed, which set them out on their little journey as well. So she came over the Dragon Wall and became a Maiden of the Spear and had a kid with this Aiel man who was called Janduin, I think that's how it's pronounced. So Rand's dad, Janduin, he died up in the Blight after his wife died because he could not bring himself to kill a man up there who resembled Shail. So, and also Amis, she told Rand that Rand resembles his mother more strongly than his father. So that's all the pieces of the puzzle right there. This is a bit of a tongue twister here, but Luke looks like Tigraine, Rand looks like Tigraine, Luke looks like Rand. So that's the resemblance Perrin was seeing. So I think I said that all properly. So in conclusion, Tigraine is Rand's mom. So Rand is some kind of royalty, and in Andor, I think he should be one of those, the Prince of Andor, whatever that thing Gawain is called. So, and then Luke is Rand's uncle, and then Galad is Rand's half brother. I just feel bad for Galad because his family has to be the most dysfunctional family in existence. He has Elaine as a sister, Rand as a brother, and at the same time going to be most likely a brother-in-law through his sister. And then Tom said that Moiraine is Tarangale's younger half-sister, so Galad also has Moiraine as an auntie, as just a little cherry on top of that little scuffed family sundae. So I feel like the most awkward experience to ever happen to a man in the history of the world, past, present and future, would have to be Galad attending Elaine and Rad's wedding, if he is even permitted by Elaine. We get a shitload of exposition in this through Rand's arc, but I think it was done really, really well. We learn a lot about the Aiel of the present through Rourke and Avienda, but then we also learn a lot of the Aiel's history through the events that occur in Roidian. Now, this is mainly true chapter 26, I think it was, the chapter called The Dedicated. That was just a phenomenal chapter, my second favorite in the whole book, only beaten by chapter 56, I want to say, the chapter called Golden Eyes. Both chapters were easy 10 out of 10s. They were so good. Seeing the Aiel's history play back in flashbacks like Memento style was just amazing. There is a lot to digest from this flashback arc, so as usual, when there's a lot of stuff I want to reference that I can't remember, I have them all listed on my monitor, so I will be looking to the side quite frequently. So starting off with the Angreal that we know of in our world in present times, these were all sent away from a place called Paerin Dyson, I think that's how you pronounce it. I think this is just the main city of the Age of Legends where the Hall of Servants was. So all the Angreal were sent away to be taken away by the Dashane Aiel, who were the original Aiel, and they basically had to take away all the Angreal so that they could keep them out of the reach of the male Aes Sedai that were going mad with the One Power. So it turns out all the Aiel are descendants of the servants to the servants, which is just wild because that's the complete opposite of what Aiel are today. And also, complete opposites of the Aiel, the Tuatha'an are also descendants of the Gen Aiel, who are descendants of the Dashane Aiel. So there was this group of Gen Aiel who had to break away from the main pack because they had just one too many bandit raids, and they did not see the point in continuing on their service for the Aes Sedai. It also turns out that the song that the Tuathan have been searching for is most likely the song that the ancestor, I think his name was Kumin, don't know if I pronounced that right, but there was a song that he sang in unison with the Ogier of the Age of Legends, and that made green things grow in the fields. So I think that's what the Tuathan have been searching for all this time. And it's pretty fucked up because it turns out the Way of the Leaf is most likely something that the old Aes Sedai used to keep the Dashane Aiel as these docile servants that never turned against them in revolt, because even Lanfear revealed that if you could slap a Dashane, they wouldn't even think bad of it. They would just wonder if they offended you in some way. We found out that modern Aiel society was formed after this Gen Aiel called Lewin killed in order to save his sister Megraine from her captors, and I believe this is also why the modern Aiel are so good at being stealthy, because Lewin noted that he made too much noise going to rescue his sister, and this ended up alerting her captors, so I believe that's why they're so stealthy nowadays. And we learned the first Maiden of the Spear, her name was Morin, and she was this other Gen Aiel who broke off from that group once more because she could not stand by while her child was kidnapped. And then Jordam, I think, was Rand's ancestor, who created the shorter spears that Aiel use nowadays. He used a longer spear, broke that off to give to Morin originally, so that's where that comes from. We also learned the Green Man's real name was Someshta. He was the last of a race called the Nim. We find out the cloaks that warders use, they're called fancloth cloaks. The soldiers during the Age of Legends used those. They also used the same insect-shaped helmets that the Shanchan used. That was pretty interesting to see. And the shock lances that Kumin mentioned in passing, I believe that is the light sticks that Damon mentioned during the Great Hunt. He said he has one of those, and that the methods for creating those is lost in time. We learn a bit more about the hole drilled into the Dark One's prison, which Mogadeen referred to as the Boar. We learned that the Boar is a result of Lanfear, whose real name is Mirin, attempting to use a new source for the One Power alongside somebody called Baidomon. I wonder who that is, maybe Asmodean. But they attempted to use that new source, which was this big, huge white spear in the sky called Sharam. And if you play Destiny, is basically the Traveler. So they tried to use that, and it just failed completely. And it resulted in a big crash and burn that released a load of darkness into the sky and screams everywhere. And I believe this is the origin of Machin Shin, the thing that's trapped in the ways, because Charn described it as an unnatural darkness that came over the world, and there was screaming everywhere, but he didn't say where the screams came from. So if I was to guess, that is where Machin Shin came from. Mirin accidentally released that onto the world, and then all the Aes Sedai had to trap it in the ways. So the last thing I wanted to talk about from this chapter was Jonai's part of the flashback. So Jonai, he went to the Hall of Servants, and he entered this room that had a bunch of Aes Sedai in it, including Solinda Sedai. And Solinda Sedai was arguing with these other Aes Sedai because they had these foretellings to go off, but that's all they had to go off. They didn't know how else to deal with the Dark One. So Jonai noted on the table in that room that there was the Dragon Banner and Kalandor. So what I'm gathering from all these flashbacks is that everything was groovy with the Dark One sealed, and then Mirin done an oopsie and opened up the Boar, and then all the Aes Sedai are panicking now because they obviously couldn't seal the Boar, and they know that the Dark One will be released eventually. So they base their plans of action on their foretellings. So they decided to leave the Dragon Banner in the Eye of the World with a big reservoir of Saadin guarded by Someshta, and then they also left Kalandor in the stone for the dragon to come get. So they planned for the dragon to come get the reservoir of Saadin, the Dragon's Banner, and Kalandor. So I believe their plan was for him to collect all these things so that he would be strong enough to face the Dark One, because, as I said, they were aware of not being able to seal the Boar, obviously, so they know the Dark One's going to come back at some point. So I think Solinda Sedai and all these old Aes Sedai are the originators of the prophecies like the Karaton cycle and the likes, because unless I'm mistaken, I believe it was Solinda Sedai that we saw at the start of the chapter, the one that first talked to Rand's ancestors, the one that was looking decrepit. So if an Aes Sedai is looking that old, then surely it's one from all the way back then and during the Age of Legends. So basically all the prophecies have lost all credibility with me at this point, because If they are a result of these foretellings the Aes Sedai had, then I can understand that they may come to happen as predicted, but I don't think the outcome of all the events will be the same as prophesied. I'll talk a bit more about Asmodean versus Rand later on in the video, but general thoughts on the ending of his arc. I thought the ending at Alcair Dal was epic, watching him open up those portals and watching him start that rainstorm to essentially stop the Aiel from killing each other. I thought that was so cool, and watching him chase after Asmodean like that, I guess that's the lost talent of traveling. It was really impressive that he came up with that plan to cut off Asmodean from the Dark One like that. I couldn't tell if it was on the spur of the moment or if he planned it from during his journey to Alcair Dal, but either way it was impressive. I don't have a prediction section for this video, I just have some general theories that I have for each character's section, and then during the general thoughts I'll have some theories in there as well. So one theory I had for Rand's arc was that Rhuidean is actually the lost city of Manetheren. There's two main points for this theory with me, and the first one is from Matt, because during this book, Matt mentioned that he doesn't think Rhuidean is actually located where it always has been. I couldn't remember if he said this jokingly or not, but it reminded me of something he said during The Dragon Reborn, because something he talked about during then was that once he went into the Mountains of Mist with the boys, and when he came back he got in a load of trouble, but people also made fun of him because he came back with this little piece of white stone that he thought looked like an ear, but nobody agreed with him besides Tam, I think it was. So this made me think of the statues that the boys saw when they went to Rhuidean, because they saw all these statues surrounding the Angreal and even the fountains. Rand was talking about the fountains having all these statues in the middle of those. So I think what Matt found in the Mountains of Mist was actually a broken off piece of those statues. Another more obvious hint for this is from Perrin's arc. When Perrin and the gang ended up in the Mountains of Mist, he talked about Manetheren a bit. He said that it suddenly disappeared one day, but he credited that disappearance to like fires and war. So what I think actually happened is that Rhuidean was transported from the Mountains of Mist, and the biggest indication of this is that the Mountains of Mist, they're constantly covered in never fading mist. Rhuidean is also covered in never fading fog until Rand and Asmodean just completely wreck the place. So just putting two and two together there, really. Something else about Rand I want to touch on is that Perrin saw Rand in, rags and a rough cloak with some bandages covering his eyes, and I remembered from the Eye of the World that when Min first looked at Rand, she saw that he had a beggar staff in his aura, so I believe this is all alluding to Rand having some kind of beggar arc. Don't know what the cause of that would be, but I kind of pieced together a bit of a theory surrounding that with other foreshadowing in this book. So Egwene saw Rand as tall as a mountain, walking through cities, crushing cities beneath his feet with people fleeing from his feet like ants, screaming. Then she also saw him in chains, but this time he was the one screaming. So I actually think Rand is going to get really powerful with the one power, start committing some really egregious acts, but then he'll suffer a bad defeat. And I think he will actually be gentled, because I don't see what else the need for that blindfold is, because Rand has described plenty of times how heightened life feels, all his senses, and how he views the world through the eyes of somebody channeling Saladin. He's described that very much as something that would make normal life without it feel just really dull in comparison. So I feel like if he gets gentled, that would explain why he is using the blindfold, because he just does not want to see life that way, I guess. Of course, I don't think he will stay gentled. I actually think gentling and stilling will be made redundant at some point in the story due to some bits from the Kraton cycle. I already mentioned these during my Dragon Reborn review, but some sections from that prophecy said that wounds of madness and cutting of hope being healed, and there was another section that said chains being broken by the dragon. So I actually think that Rand is going to find a solution to the taint on Saladin, as well as find out how to cure the madness that male channelers would have already suffered. And finally, I think he will find out how to reverse gentling and stilling. I have no idea how he'll actually achieve this. If I was to make a guess, if an alternative source for the one power, like what Lanfear tried to use as an option, then I think maybe that's a possibility. Lanfear don't really have much to add for her. She's kind of just chilling and plodding still. She updates us on all these stances that the Forsaken have towards Rand, and we meet Grendal. Well, we don't meet her. She's mentioned by Lanfear. She's a new Forsaken introduced who collects handsome young men, whatever that's about. And we see just how power hungry Lanfear is. She wants to rule the world with Rand, and even suggests that he pledges himself to the Dark One. But I really like Mirren. I'm really looking forward to seeing how things with her progress. I want to see what her large-scale, long-term plans are. And the Forsaken in general give me heavy Seven Deadly Sin vibes. I know there's 13, not 7, but still, like, you have Ravin and Lanfear could both be greed. You have Samael and Bilal, who are both envy. Then you have Demandred, who seems to be wrath. And then this new one, Grendal, is lust. Like, maybe I'm just making connections that aren't there. Okay, guys, time to talk about my favorite character in the whole series. Everybody knows who this is, Egwene. I was reading this book, and there was a moment I read in this that I didn't enjoy. And my response to it was, I understand this, but I don't enjoy it. And when I said that to myself, I was in complete despair, because that is literally an Egwene quote. And I was not quoting Egwene, it is just something that came out of me. And when I said that, I felt complete distraught. I could not believe I quoted Egwene unintentionally. Is that why I hate Egwene? Do I just hate myself? Do I see myself in Egwene subconsciously? Then that makes me hate her? I just don't even want to think about it. Egwene doesn't really do much in this. I feel like her and Matt both kind of serve the general purpose of providing different perspectives on Rand's arc. Egwene in this is kind of just the opposite of Culture Shark. She's all Culture Shock. She's all for Aiel culture and trying to integrate herself with the wise ones. So besides that, she is just trying to advance as a dreamer and becoming more Aes Sedai like throughout the book. And it really surprises me just how capable Egwene is at making me hate her more and more with each installment in this series, because my detest for Egwene has gotten to a level where even the slightest annoyance from her mouth drives me crazy. Like, at the start of this book, she said to herself, Rand is surely at least as strong as her. What? What? You think the Dragon Reborn is on your level at least? Like, where does she get off having this kind of ego? Seriously. What else? And after Rand defeats the Trollocs, she says it's not fair that Rand can do what he can do and he isn't able to. I'm so sick of Egwene. It's insane. What else did she do? There was a lot she done to annoy me in this book, unsurprisingly. Like, saying that that it's not fair that Rand can do what he can do, that is just such an ignorant thing to say. If only she knew half the struggle Rand is actually going through. And then when Rand says he doesn't love her anymore, she has this really fucking annoying inner monologue where she does this really, like, patronizing thing in her head where she's like, oh, he's putting on such a brave face for me. Oh, good little boy Rand. So annoying. And all the girls in general, all 3 of them done this really annoying thing that was really irritating through the whole book, where they are pretending to be fake Aes Sedai. I'm so sick of that from all 3 of them. Egwene, especially when she was interacting with Amis and Bear, and she was trying to negotiate with Amis, saying that she's Aes Sedai, and when Amis rightfully so puts Egwene in her place, she's like, how dare you, I'm Aes Sedai. And I'm so sick of them saying this. They need to stop it really quick. Egwene had this whole spiel in this book as well about being greedy for knowledge, and then proceeds to be needlessly disagreeable with Amis, who is the person that wants to teach her what she's meant to be so desperate to learn. And she's still trying to disagree with her and get her way, instead of just listening and learning like she wants to. Oh my god. I need a book without Egwene desperately. When Min last looked at Gawain, she saw in his aura that he's either going to kneel at Egwene's feet or snap her neck. I am praying every night, guys. I'm not even religious, I'm atheist, but I'm praying every night before I go to bed that Gawain breaks Egwene's neck. If that happens in a book, that's going to be an instant 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5 star rating, instantly if that happens. But I am not that lucky a person. I doubt Egwene will die in this series, and if she does, it'll probably be in A Memory of Light at the very earliest. There wasn't really anything else to mention from Egwene's arc. When she's learning about being a dreamer from Bayer and Amis, she is told that you're able to enter Talair and Riyadh in the flesh. That was pretty interesting to me, because if you remember from my Dragon Reborn video, I predicted that Corianne Nadil, the Aes Sedai, is actually alive, but she's hiding in Talair and Riyadh. So moving on to Matt, really enjoyed Matt in this. As far as the perspective he provided over Rand's arc in this, he provided the perspective of somebody who still sees how bizarre everyone's situation is that they're in. Everybody else by this point in the story has pretty much accepted what's happening as a matter of fact, except Matt. He wants to get as far away from anything Aes Sedai related, anything One Power related, and that doesn't change from start to finish. When he was in the Stone of Tyr, he wanted to leave, but the Tyverian pull from Rand was too strong. Same during the journey to Al Dal. He wanted to leave with the peddlers, but that never worked out. And I just really enjoyed Matt's POV, reading from his POV. He's really witty, really funny, and I really enjoy his comedic relief that he provides. And he does all this complaining, but deep down he has a heart of gold, really. He would never actually leave his friends alone in a pinch. And he's shown this multiple times already with how he saved the girls from the Stone of Tyr and how he stayed with Rand throughout everything in the Isle Waste. So as far as his plotline went, really enjoyed the content with the Aelfin and Eelfin. I think they're a fascinating new race to be introduced. So the Aelfin and the Eelfin, they're this new race who people used to deal with using iron, musical instruments, and light-making tools, and courage, I think, was the fourth one. So people used to use these things to deal with them so that they wouldn't cheat, and then they could ask any three questions pertaining to their fate, because the Aelfin and Eelfin can apparently, according to Moraine, read the pattern more closely because of how their realm is folded or some shit like that. The Aelfin tell Mat that he needs to die and live once more a part of what was. I'm pretty sure that's already been carried out by the lynching that the Aelfin done, but now Mat has all these old memories from old commanders, and he is now the son of battles, as the Aelfin called him. So he is now basically the most competent fighter and commander alive right now, which is awesome. I love seeing that from Mat of all people, because he does not want to be in that position, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this all pairs together with his luck-based abilities. And he has this new fox medallion, which is pretty cool, and his new fancy black spear with the sword blade on top. Interestingly, this fox medallion has the Aes Sedai symbol on it. Now guys, I went down the most horrendous rabbit hole until like 2 a.m. yesterday doing research on yin and yang, because after finishing this book, I am convinced that Wheel of Time is set on Earth. I suspected this since The Great Hunt, and now it's just confirmed for me, no denying it. And I believe that the Aes Sedai are actually wrong about the symbol that they are working under. I don't believe that represents saidin and saidar. I believe it represents yin and yang, negative and positive energies. And I eventually, during all my research yesterday, got to the point where I was looking at the negative and positive traits of foxes. Yes, it is that bad, guys. The rabbit hole was that bad. So some negative and positive traits of foxes include good luck, protection, cleverness, cunning, and most importantly, mischievousness / being a trickster. And all of those apply to Mat, especially the trickster, especially the good luck, because he has this luck ability, and the Aelfin actually called him trickster. The Aelfin also said he needs to give up half the light to save the world. Not too sure what that means, unless it's just the light, like capital L, he needs to give up half of that. That wouldn't surprise me either, because I think since book 3, Mat has been set up as the true hero to the story, because he constantly says, I'm no hero, and he's the last person that wants that responsibility. So I think it would be in Wheel of Time fashion for Mat, who doesn't want to be the hero, to be the true hero. And I've been saying as well since book 1 that I think he's going to go to the dark side. I'm changing my mind on that. I think he will be tainted by the shadow. I think he already has been, but I don't think he'll fully go to that side. I think he'll be in the grey area and kind of an anti-hero kind of thing. They also say it's part of Mat's fate to marry the Daughter of the Nine Moons. I think this is fairly obvious what this represents. He's going to marry the Empress of Seanchan, or her daughter, because in the Great Hunt it was said that the Empress of Seanchan rules from the Crystal Throne in the Court of Nine Moons. I'm going to attempt to piece together how this can actually come to happen based on some other foreshadowings we got throughout the series so far. So in this book, we see in Perrin's visions in Telerian Riyadh that he saw Mat naked and bound, and Egwene saw him wrestling with a Seanchan woman who tied an invisible leash to him. In The Dragon Reborn, Egwene saw dreams of Mat with Seanchan that were so bad she just wrote them off as nightmares. So here's what I'm thinking is going to happen. At some point, Mat is going to be captured by the Seanchan. I think he might go with Rand to Seanchan and get captured while he's over there with Rand, because it was said in the Keraton cycle that the dragon will bind the 9 moons. So I think he'll be captured, and this will lead to him befriending the Empress's daughter, or the Empress herself. I think it's more likely to be the Empress's daughter, just because what are the odds a prisoner befriends the Empress? It's still unlikely for her daughter, but I think it's a lot more likely than the Empress herself. So I think that position will lead to them befriending each other, and then we'll end up with marriage. And I think Mat being in that position will lead to him potentially being against Rand, because in The Dragon Reborn, Egwene had visions of Rand confronting Seanchan, and her, as I already mentioned, her dream about Mat with the Seanchan were so bad that she wrote them off as nightmares. So I think in those visions that she denied was Mat leading the Seanchan. So quick little side note about the Seanchan while I'm talking about them. During the Eye of the World, Domon was telling Mat and Rand these stories of different landmarks in the world, and one of them was a crystal lattice that covered an island, and when the moon was up, that crystal lattice hummed. And it was said in the Great Hunt, as I already mentioned, that the Empress of Seanchan rules from the Crystal Throne. So I think that crystal lattice is actually either covering Shan-Chan, or it's like main city, or just covering the court of the Nine Moons. Well, I think that Crystal Lattice is somewhere in Shan-Chan. One last thing I want to touch on from the Elfin, they said something pretty interesting. They said, you will have sidestepped the threat of fate, left your fate to drift on the winds of time, and you will be killed by those who do not want that fate fulfilled. That was honestly the most intriguing line in the whole book for me, because this is implying the world we're seeing right now is on a minuscule level to what's actually happening in the larger sense. Because what kind of beings can even be in that position to be reading the threads of fate that closely, to the point where if Matt even thinks of edging off course, they're going to kill him? I think this might be the same people that Brigitte talked about the precepts and prescripts regarding all the legends that are in Tel Air and Riyadh. I think whoever set up those prescripts and precepts might be the people that the Elfin were saying will kill Matt if he goes off course here. So that's something I wanted to mention real quick. I'm going to cut myself off here because this video has been going on too long already, and I'm not even probably halfway there yet. So I'm going to separate this into 2 parts. Part 2 will probably come out the Tuesday following this video. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.